Okay, Danielle, we are ready to start. We will not have Steve Weeks or Jacob Rostovsky on this committee meeting, but we do have a quorum.
Okay, great. Thank you. Actually, in that note, welcome everyone to the Enforcement Inspections Committee. And Christy, if you'd like to take the roll call.
All right. Danielle Munoz.
Here.
Tanya Fairley.
Here.
Kelly Funk.
Here.
And we have Jacob Rostovsky and Steve Weeks absent today.
All right, thank you. So next we're going to go to the discussion and approval of the minutes. So may I ask for a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes of the January 22nd, 2024 meeting.
And I second.
Okay, thank you. And Christy, is there any public comment?
There is none in the room. We can open it up to the public. To the online.
Thank you. This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on the minutes, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 15-second warning. Are there any comments on the minutes? And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and we can go to roll call.
Okay, Danielle Munoz.
Approved.
Tanya Fairley.
Approve.
Kelly Funk.
Approved.
Okay, that motion passes.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. So the next thing we'll go to is the discussion and possible recommendation regarding the proposed administrative fines that directly impact consumer safety. This is from California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Section 974. And I will ask Christy to kindly lead this discussion.
Great. Thank you. So you have a very large item in your packets. I will say to start off with that we will likely not get through this packet item today because as we know, we have our, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. We do a lot of work in our committee meetings, and so we'll be doing a lot of committee meeting work here today. One of the things that came out of SB 803 is a section of law that states the board shall establish by regulation a schedule of administrative fines for violations of this chapter that directly impact consumer safety. So what changed is that verbiage of directly impact consumer safety. So what staff did was put together basically a risk assessment of all of our violations. And we took that to our Health and Safety Committee. And the Health and Safety Committee discussed this several times. And some of the recommendations that were made at the Health and Safety Committee level were either to increase some of the fines because they didn't feel they were a deterrent enough, or really look at how we increase our fines based on first, second, or third offense. So as most of you know, your first offense might be $50. If we find it again within a certain time period, it goes up to $50. They incrementally go up. Some don't go up, like say practice of medicine, for example, because it's $1,000 to start with. So it's $1,000 for first, for second, for third, because $1,000 is obviously a very large amount of a fine, and we have others that are large as well. And so, but one of the things the committee recommended is that the increase should be the same. So if we increase from a first to a second by 25%, then everything should be increased from a first to a second by 25%, which makes very good logical sense. Does it make sense with our type of fine schedule in our industry? Well, that's something that this committee should talk about. Citations are maxed out at $5,000. We used to actually have many that were that high. We do not have that anymore. One of the reasons why fines used to get that high is because of when we really went through the foot spa issues of them not being cleaned appropriately. That's a fine for every chair you had in your establishment, regardless if they were, if we found one chair that was very dirty and you had 10 chairs, you were fined for 10 chairs. So with the allowance of liners, we don't see that as much anymore. But this committee is going to really need to look at this recommendation, which starts on, well, the very colorful packet item that starts on page 1. And if you want to turn to that or look at that page, you'll see what we've done is we've listed in this packet every single violation that the board can cite for. And it's 28 pages of different violations. And we have listed an example of when and why this is cited. And then we've given the fine schedule, which shows the current fine amount. And then we've added in the proposed fine amount. And this would be the proposed fine amount based on if the Health and Safety Committee made a recommendation of that first offense fine, and then we increased all of these the exact same percentage. And then we've added the recommended risk level. So these risk levels were reviewed by staff. We also took into consideration, some of you may be familiar with the Nevada report. This was a report that we shared with the board. It's been a couple of years, so if anyone is interested in it, I'd be happy to send it out. But it's where a group of states got together and experts who really looked at where is the harm in this industry, and Nevada was required to do that for their legislature, and they produced a pretty great report that talks about consumer harm for every type of service that's done in this industry. So we looked at a lot of different factors and came up with this risk factor, and then we've also explained why we felt, because this is a staff document, we explained why we felt that risk was whatever we ranked it at. So given that, we are tasked to look at our fine schedule to ensure that the legislative intent is being met, that we are directly impacting consumer safety. I would challenge this committee to really keep that in the backs of your mind as we go through each one of these and you provide your input. Does the violation cause consumer risk? And I use an example on a lot of times is where, we have a violation for clean towels not being in closed cabinets. We have no proven consumer harm that has taken place from a clean towel where the cabinet was left open. Now, should they be in closed cabinets? Of course, but what's the fine? Why are we, what's the consumer harm if somebody left that cabinet open for their clean towels? So I know we have two very good licensees on our committee today, and Danielle, who is, I know, a frequent consumer. So I really am challenging you guys to really talk about each of these violations and see if you agree with what has been recommended, or you can agree to lower these fines. You can agree that you can state this violation is not needed. And then once we get through all of this, we'll make that final recommendation to the board. Any questions?
Let me just say, this is Tanya. Let me just say, when I read this, I was so excited to see some of these fines actually increased, because I sit on DRC, and the number of multiple offenders on DRC because of these violations, I feel like it's because the fines do not really hold them accountable for violating them. And unfortunately, there are some people who learn better when it hits their pocket, and it will make this easier for us on the board. Well, we would hope anyways. But yes, so I'm sorry. I was so excited for this part. I was just like, yes, finally. Although Steve may disagree if he was here that, I like to give away money sometimes.
This is Kelly. I commend the amount of work that went into this. Very thorough, very detailed, the level of risk being listed and the reason why, the increases, some decreases, which I thought were very fair. And I did flag a couple that I thought that are marked as low risk, that the fine seemed a little bit higher to me. So if you want to get into nitty gritty today, I did flag a couple of those, but otherwise kudos to the staff that put this all together. It's a lot of work. And when you really put yourself in the licensee's position about, are we talking about neglect? Are we talking about an educational need for them? And the direct impact of consumer safety and how much it affects their pocketbook. It's a lot of things to consider, and I'm really impressed with the amount of work. With that being said, do you want us to be specific about the ones that we would like to see higher or lower today?
I think we should start from the top, and we'll start going through each one of them.
Okay.
So if okay with you, I'll go ahead and lead us through each one of these violations. We'll go ahead and get started with 7313, access to establishment for inspection. This, there was no change in the recommended fine amount. It starts out at $250. We, as staff, believe this is a high risk. If you are not going to allow us access into your establishment, that is alarming. And so we do consider this a high risk. Any comments on this recommendation?
No.
Oh, okay.
No,
I see your heads, and I'm gonna go ahead and move on. We'll
Yeah.
do a few, and then we will pause and open up for public comment, just so we don't get too far ahead, without letting the public chime in on this as well. Our next item is 7317A. So this is an establishment that has no license, or the establishment may have changed ownership, which makes that license not valid. Oftentimes they have moved and have not applied for a new establishment license. This first offense is at $500. Right now, the proposed fine amount is $1,000, going to $2,000, and then going to $3,000. And this is considered a high risk, especially if it gets to a third offense, because they would have been told first time and second time. We have payment plans. We have options to work with anyone who gets this high of a fine. So this, we do believe, again, an unlicensed establishment is a high risk.
I agree.
Agreed.
All right, we're going to move on to the next page. Next is 7317B is an unlicensed individual. This might be one of the highest risks of all. This is a person who we have found that does not have a personal license. So this is not when a person's license, they accidentally forgot to renew. This is a true unlicensed person. That first offense today is $1,000, and that would go up to a second offense and a third offense, increasing by $1,000 each time. And again, we believe that's one of the highest risks we have.
I agree.
Agree.
All right, next is 7317C. This is an expired establishment license. So we have ranked this as a low to medium. This is usually when somebody forgot to renew their establishment license. And right now that first offense is $250, and that proposed fine was $100. So with the proposal increasing, it'd be $100 to $200 to $300. I think this was lowered because it is very often somebody forgot to renew it. And quite honestly, as soon as they are told, they go, sometimes even before the inspector leaves, they are renewing that license online. So any comments on this?
I don't agree with this one. I don't feel like we should lower the amount. I feel like it should stay the same and then increase over time. And again, speaking as an establishment owner, it's our responsibility, just as it is when we have our licensing. And even though it's expired, it's still it's still not, they're not operating with the license. So I went back and forth with this, and I don't feel like the lowering of the, and I mean, and then, everyone else who's already paid the 250. I just feel like it should stay something that is a little bit more, consistent with what we're doing. I didn't feel like lowering this is okay.
I agree. And I do like the built-in if they do it immediately after an inspection. So I'm wondering, is there a 7-day window, a 24-hour? What's the immediate, if they do it right away, they don't get the fine? Because I like that, but I agree it shouldn't be lowered.
There's not a time, but our cite and fine unit does take that into consideration, as you do in DRC as well. If someone comes to you in DRC with a $250 fine, but you see that they renewed it a month, that's the DRC's option, has the option to lower that fine. Staff also look at that. If they get the when we are processing citations, they double check first to see if the establishment license was already issued. And if they've mailed it in and it's been issued, we've reached compliance, so they won't be fined. They'll get a citation, but they might not get that actual dollar amount fine. Okay. And so with that, I would ask, if we maintained that at 250 for a first offense, would the committee want to keep it as is and only up it to 300 on a second offense, or are you okay with the
500
same increase? So it would be 250, 500,
and 500.
Yep.
750.
Okay.
Yeah. By the second time, you are doing something wrong.
Yeah. By then, you shouldn't own a business, because if you can't keep your license up, then what are we doing here?
Yeah.
One excuse, maybe, you missed the mail or whatever happened, but 2 times we have a problem.
Yeah, I would even do like 203 and then 5. I was actually thinking about a graduated schedule based on time. Like if you forgot and then like a month out, maybe you did it. But if it's like 3 or 4 months out, I mean, does the fine double in time is what I'm wondering.
It doesn't. The way the law is right now is it's by offense.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you could have like just never did it 6 months ago. Because I'm just worried about the person who just doesn't get around to it, within like a long period of time.
I mean, keep in mind that your license has to be renewed every 2 years. Yeah. So if you're not renewing within 2 years, not only are you getting, now you've also doubled your delinquency fee as well.
Oh,
but then if we, and we, these are on our radars when we have, because we do consider them unlicensed. So when we have an unlicensed establishment, if the enforcement analyst is not seeing that those have renewed, we're going to send an inspector out again.
Okay. One thing I will ask, though, in regards to licensing is that I do notice this, just because I'm on the other side too. Once you pay, there's no reminder to, like at least I can say I don't remember getting. But there's no like reminder that says like, 30 days your license is due. Like, for example, like when you're paying a regular bill, it sends you a notification that you have a upcoming bill or like an annual subscription. I noticed that we don't get any of that for our licensing.
You should.
Yeah, I do. I get the reminder that it's due in the mail.
Yeah, a courtesy notice is mailed out about 83 days in advance of anyone's expiration date.
See, this is why I put stuff in my calendar, because I make sure I pay it ahead of time so that I don't fall into this. And I didn't even notice that there's anything that comes in the mail. You talking about paranoia.
You're very organized.
All right. Any more comments on that one?
Okay. No, so we don't agree with that one, but what does that mean? Does that mean anything, or you're just kind of taking no?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
So my note is that it's going to be this committee's recommendation to maintain $250 as a first offense with the same percentage increase as what we're doing on the rest of the fines. Like,
Perfect.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Thanks.
okay. All right. Now we will move to 7317D. This is an expired individual license. So the first recommendation was to keep it at 250, but we have shown the increase here as a recommendation from 250 to 500 to 750. We ranked this as a medium risk. The reason why we ranked it medium is because this is an expired license, so they have gone to school and tested and become licensed, but they have failed in renewing that license. So kind of the same as the one, but this is the previous one, but this is for the individual license.
I like this. I like the jump up in offense cost if it's the second and third. And I like that there's the little built-in, if they do it right then, if they didn't realize it was expired and they do it right then, maybe the citation could be foregone. Yeah, I like that.
I agree.
Okay. Okay, we're going to move on. 7317E. This is an individual working in an expired establishment. So those individuals who are currently licensed, their license is valid, but their owner forgot to renew their establishment license. So this is considered a low to medium risk. The first offense, which was maintained as the same as it is today, which is $25, but that would change the increase. So this is one that's a little different. The current fine amount is 25 for first, 50 for second, and 100 for the third offense. And the proposed fine amount has that same increase as the others, but it actually makes the third offense be a little bit less than the current third offense. So 25, 50, 75 is what the proposed recommendation is.
I think that it should stay to 100 because if you're at a third offense and you're in an established license, you know what to look for after you get to find the first one. And I actually think this one is a little bit on the lower side, anyways, because when you become licensed, you get the checklist. You got to make sure that the establishment is licensed that you're working in. So I don't see a reason to decrease the third offense. But that's just my opinion.
I agree that, $25 seems very nice for someone who was just like, oh my gosh, I didn't know we moved. The owner didn't do the paperwork right, whatever. But the second and third should go way up because that shows complete negligence of checking and balancing those things. For this one, I think if we can make it go up, maybe 100 for the second offense, 200 for the third offense, something like that.
So keep in mind that that's going to move us away from the same gradual increase of all of our fines.
Okay. I see what we're trying to do there.
And that's fine. That's fine if the committee wants to make that determination. But that was one of the things that the Health and Safety Committee struggled with is, should it just be the same? Is it always going to go from first to second, 50%, from second to third, 75%?
Honestly, I hope we would never see a second and third offense on this one. It seems like a one-off.
We do. Sitting on DRC, you see this, and that, I guess that was my concern, is that the rate to start to begin with is low. Because it's the individual's responsibility to make sure that the place is established, and we offer checks and balances for that. They log on to Breeze, put the establishment information in, and they can find that.
So maybe 50 or 75, Tanya, for the first offense. What do you think? And then incrementally up from there.
Yeah,
if you did 50, if you started with 50, I believe that would make it to 100 and then to 150.
I would support that.
I would too.
Danielle, any comment?
No, you all are. This is actually where I might lean on you all in the industry to know. And you made a good point about Breeze being available to check if your establishment is active. And if you're seeing it in DRC, then you may want to do something about it.
Yeah.
All right. We will move on then to the next one. This is 7317F, individual working in an unlicensed establishment. So this is a completely unlicensed establishment. So you have a person and that establishment has never been licensed. The recommendation for the proposed fine is $250, which is what it is right now. But the increase in the same gradual increase would go to $500 for a second offense and $750 for a third offense.
Okay.
Sounds good.
One question. Sorry, you know what? I'm just thinking with the low to medium risk, sorry, on the previous one, if we were going to raise the fines that much, is that to say that we need to raise the risk level so that it's all like commiserate? I just realized I skipped.
Do you mean 7317E should be medium risk?
Yeah, if we're going to make the fines that high, there must be some sort of justification on the risk. Like that's why it's high, because the risk.
Right.
Is that how you all feel?
I would say medium risk if you're working in an expired establishment. Because if they're expired in paperwork, what other things are possibly not up to standard?
And again, keeping in mind that these risks are just a staff's recommendation on our research, what we've done. So
I think the risk assessment. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought. Oh my.
Sorry. Go ahead,
I'm
Tanya.
sorry. No, I'm sorry. It was cutting off, so I thought you were done talking, Christy. My apologies. I think I like the risk assessment because it actually kind of, to me, being an industry member, it kind of makes sense. Like, okay, yes, it makes you kind of think of it a little bit differently. And so to Danielle's point, if we're going to me, individual working in an expired establishment is not really a low risk. I would definitely classify that more of a medium to high risk because, again, it's not licensed. Even though it's expired, it's still out of compliance, I should say.
Yeah, it's lapsed, so you are not licensed in that moment. And it goes back to if we're keeping precedent, then yeah, it would be medium.
Okay.
Okay.
Agree.
Thanks.
All right. Our next one is the big one of all, 7320, practice of medicine. There was not a recommendation to increase that first offense. That first offense is $1,000, but the proposed fine amount has it going to second offense $2,000, third offense $3,000.
Well,
And is there? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tanya.
On this one, I went back and forth to this one, and I'm taking in my notes from DRC and just stating that this one is actually, to me, a high risk. And I feel like a lot of the ones that we see on DRC are multiple offenders, and I feel maybe we should now raise the dollar amount on this one, starting at $1,500, and then going up from there. Only because this practice of medicine involves a high safety risk. It's the needles, it's the injections, it's the fillers, it's all the things that are out of scope of practice for any of our licensees.
So Tanya's recommendation is to make that first offense $1,500.
Yes.
And that would make the second offense
$3,000.
Yes.
And the third offense $4,500.
Yes.
Is there, this is Kelly, a time frame between the first and second that has to occur, or is it like if they come back within a month and it's still there? I'm just curious if between the offenses, is there a time, or is it just the next time they find it, if it's next week or 3 months from now? Or
they usually do a follow-up. Once they get fined, they usually do a follow-up.
Right.
And what we've seen in DRC is oftentimes they'll get the first offense fine, and then the inspector will go back out, and then it's time, if they appeal it, they come to DRC, and I would almost say more than half the time they're getting fined again, because they, instead of removing it or throwing it away, now they're making it a personal item, or they're putting it somewhere and then want to use the offense of, oh no, I just cleaned it and put it in storage, or I've this is a personal item. So when the inspector does the follow-up, when we're in DRC, we often ask, have they been seen again?
I agree. This is one of our highest risks to consumer safety. This is a licensee who is operating either under the guise that this is allowed or just doing their complete own thing. And if it's a first time and they get a warning or they say they'll get rid of the equipment right away, that's one thing. But if it's someone who's just operating on their own standards, we just can't let that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from somebody who goes and uses services, this is one where the public is probably not going to know the difference and are more susceptible to, just if they offer it and then the consumer's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Like, it's just, we just don't know the line. So they're like,
this is an egregious fine. This needs to be set aside from everything else. This is like, you have chosen to make your own rules of what's safe and what's not safe. And yeah, this definitely needs to be the highest.
Yeah, and consumers don't know the difference, so they're more likely to go along with it. And then that's where the harm is, I think, for the intersection of where that harms the consumer. We're like, yeah, sure, that sounds great. And we don't know that we're about to get treatment from someone that's not trained.
And I agree that 1,000 is already high, but it needs to be even more of a deterrent. What if people are making that much in a day and they say, well, I'll just pay the fine, it's not a big deal. Like it needs to be a very effective offense fine.
Is this happening enough in DRC that it needs to go up? Because I do like the graduated, like 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000.
I've seen it. Yeah, it's going. And usually the licensees that are having this kind of violation are deciding purposefully to operate outside of scope. Mm-hmm. Most of them that I have seen have not been misinformed. They are choosing to do this, and they make a ton of money from the population that doesn't know better. So yeah, I think this needs to be a higher fine for sure. You can make $1,000 in one client from doing something that's outside of scope, and that an hour. So it needs to be a bigger deterrent, in my opinion. Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to point out that what we have recommended is $1,500 for first offense, $3,000 for second, and $4,500 for third. Keeping in mind that you're 500 away from your max citation. So somebody who also happens to be employing an unlicensed person, that's $1,000 fine. So now we're going to have, it will be capped at 5,000. So I just want to make sure we understand that.
And I think that's fine. I think the issue more so is, if we're going to set this precedent, is letting them see that there's more of a risk and more of a obligation to them, because the fact that we cap it at $5,000 to begin with is far more than what we've done in DRC at all.
I'm curious, I have a question, Christy. Is this something, I know this is all for our reference, these guides and whatnot, is this type of fine, can we promote that is among the licensed population, that is the new fine, like as more of a deterrent? This fine for outside of scope of practice has gone up to $1,500. Make sure what you're doing is within scope, that type of thing?
Well, once it becomes a regulation. So the way the process to change this works is this committee will make a recommendation to the full board. The full board will then accept or make some changes. And once we have that final decision from the board, the regulation process starts. And that could take 1 to 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
So we're ways away from we're a ways away from there, but this is the starting of it.
Okay. Excuse me, my gardeners are here. Let me mute and close my windows. I'll be right back.
I think this might be a good time to actually pause and open it up to public comment on anything that we have discussed thus far.
Sounds good.
And is it continuing to be true that there are no public in the room?
That's correct.
Thank you. If anyone would like to make a comment on this discussion thus far, you are welcome to by pressing the hand icon to raise your hand, or clicking on the question mark icon, typing the word comment into that text box and clicking send. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 15-second warning. And we do have a request for comment from Fred Jones. Fred, I will send you a request to unmute your microphone. And you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Good morning, committee members. Great deliberation. Fred Jones on behalf of the Professional Beauty Federation. I'm trying really hard to follow Ms. Underwood's recommendation to look for cutting back wherever possible. So take this with that grain of salt. This 7317F, individuals working in an unlicensed establishment. I'm not sure if that applies to licensed individuals working in an unlicensed salon. If it does, it is shifting the onus to each individual licensee working in that salon to make sure and look whether or not that establishment is licensed. Yes, it is their legal and technical responsibility to only work in a licensed establishment, but I'm not sure it justifies any increase in fines. So again, I'm trying hard to follow Christie's overall effort to try to cut back fines where appropriate. So that's just one quibble I would offer. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do not see any further requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature for now?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to 7320.2. This is illegal treatment methods. An example of this is when an inspector finds a licensee using an X-ray device. This is not very common. A solution of phenol greater than 10% or corrosive sublimate. It was a lot of tech science words there. To a solution greater than 1 in 500. This, obviously, if we did find this, would be a very high risk. And I can tell you that we do not find it very often, but if we did, again, it's for consumer safety, and this would be a very high risk situation.
Is this, would this fall under the product, I just lost my train of thought, for the nail salon,
The
help me
MMA.
out. Yes.
No, it would not. There's a separate regulation for that. So this really
Okay.
is, it's an older statute back many, many years ago. I believe it came into effect right before I became the executive officer. And there were people using X-ray devices for skincare services, and they established this section just to make it very clear that you can't use it. It's very old practice. I don't believe it's done anymore, but you never know when something might come back. And I do think, it's definitely, again, we don't find it, but it's in statute. I wouldn't recommend we get rid of it. I would recommend that this maintain a very high risk to consumers. It's currently at 500. The recommendation is from 500 to 1,000 to 1,500. It probably warrants the same fine as 7320 because it's still one of those very high risks, even though, we're likely not going to see it anytime soon. But if we did, it should warrant a very high fine.
Yeah, should it match?
I agree.
Yeah, like keep the precedent from 7320.
I think that's a good idea.
I would match it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Agree.
All right. The next item is 7336, no supervision of an apprentice. This is when an inspector finds an apprentice actually providing services. So keep in mind that this is actually providing services, and their approved trainer is not directly supervising that apprentice. Again, an apprentice working in an establishment, they are to be receiving on-the-job training and to be supervised at all times. So this is being ranked a high risk because it is a person who's not fully tested and received their license. The recommended was to maintain it at $100, increase to $200, and then to $300 with the gradual increase.
Now,
This is one that I have.
is this fine to the apprentice or to the trainer?
I don't know.
This is fined to the trainer.
Anyone have?
No, it's usually been to the apprentice.
Inspectors or inspections, enforcement. We need to verify that.
I've seen this in DRC that it's gone to the apprentice because the trainer's not there.
That doesn't seem fair.
It's the individual.
It's the apprentice.
So this does go to the apprentice.
Yeah, I
which
think
is probably why that fine is a little lower than what you might think, because
yeah,
you're also going to get cited for unlicensed activity.
If this situation happens, could you just say that again?
They're going to be cited for 7349 unlicensed activity as well.
Okay. The trainee will, or trainer.
Apprentice.
The apprentice.
Excuse me. The owner will get cited 7349 for employing an unlicensed person because there's no trainer, and the apprentice will get cited 7317 for working without a license.
Wow.
Because they don't have a trainer. Yes.
And cited for 7336 because the supervisor wasn't there. So the onus is falling back on the apprentice, which, this is one of those ones that I actually hate. Because is the apprentice aware that under no circumstances should they be operating when their supervisor is not there? And we see this in DRC all the time, right? The supervisor, they went out to lunch, they went to the bathroom, whatever. I totally agree that they should not. However, how is this information being conveyed to them, and the risk that they are taking, or the risk that it will be assigned to them?
Yeah, what if the trainer's like, oh, it's not going to be a big deal, I'll be back soon, right? Like, then there's a power dynamic there. You're not going to push back. Thinking about that.
So I think it's important to remember that this is if we actually find them working.
Yeah.
There's no trainer. So this is not if we go in and the trainer has left and they're found alone. So we're not citing them when they've been found completely alone if they're not providing any services. But you're right, it happens all the time. The trainer goes out for lunch and the apprentice is working with on a client, and the trainers just leave. It happens all the time. So they are told that they sign. It's on their. I believe it's on their application. I believe it's on their apprentice application. It is on the apprentice application for an apprentice license. That this is what they're responsible for. But again, there is an aspect that we're holding apprentices responsible because they haven't been given the best advice from, whether it be their sponsor, trainer, or anyone in between. But that's also why we have DRC.
Kelly, I think
Kelly, could you mute?
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm okay with the fine schedule, the new one where it goes 1 to 2 to 3.
Me too. I'm okay with it. I'm on DRC and I have a different. When we see these, it's kind of like that whole, okay, they've gotten their warning and we got to move on. Not all things in this arena are fair, but to set the precedent, I agree.
All right. We are going to move on to 7348. This is no licensee in charge of an establishment. So this section ensures that someone who is licensed by the board is present when services are being offered. The violation is often cited because a person who is licensed will not take responsibility for being in charge. So as a result, the establishment is issued a citation. It's definitely something that we could probably increase on social media to get more education out. A lot of people don't like to sign the inspection report when they're being inspected. And we really just need a licensee to be in charge to kind of go over the inspection with the inspector. You know, some places have designated licensees in charge. They have a manager that's always available, but some don't. And so oftentimes the inspector will be, well, who is going to serve as the licensee in charge? And they don't want to do that because they feel like they're personally liable, which they are not. However, we do think that a licensee in charge is an important statute. We have it ranked at a medium level risk. The recommendation is to keep it at 100, but the increase would change to 200, then to 300, which is increasing the fines for second and third offense.
That sounds
Okay, I'm
fair
okay
and in
with
line
that.
with medium. Mhm.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. The next one is, again, one of the worst, 7349. This is employing an unlicensed person. This is employing a person who has never had a license. So it's not an expired license. It's 100%. You're putting people to work that have never potentially gone to school or even taken the exam. This is a high risk. The fine amount was maintained at $1,000 for a first offense, second to $2,000, and third to $3,000.
You know, I want to increase this one like we did the last one to 1,500 because this is, to me right now, the way it is, we've seen these owners in there several times, several offenses. And I think because $1,000 is like Kelly said, you know, in the salon, you can make $1,000 real quick, but you start hitting them a little bit high to begin with, then it makes a bigger impact. So I'm going to propose that we move that to 1,500.
I second.
It's in line with the high risk, so I'm okay with it because it's in line with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I do see multiple people, like even on the ones that I'm not on DRC, but I've seen folks do this like multiple times. I know I voted on those.
Right.
Yeah.
And like Tanya said, somebody can make that money easily in a day and just decide to keep going that way for the rest of the days of the month and just pay the fine. So I think it makes sense to increase it.
Okay.
All right. Moving on to 7349. I think there might be a little letter that we missed in that. Employing a license with an expired license. So this is when the inspector comes in and realizes that the personal license is expired. Again, staff do take into consideration if they have renewed that license. So you can usually tell if somebody forgot, and they'll usually go on. Renewing online is very easy, and even our renewals by paper are 4 weeks at the most to get that processed. And so by the time it gets to our site and fine unit, they may have already renewed and they would not get that fine. So keeping in mind that we do take all of that into consideration at the staff level as well. But this is a medium offense because they have gone to school and been licensed. And that first offense, there was not a recommendation to change that. So it's at 250. Then there's no change at all. It goes from 250 to 300 to 500. And again, this is for the expired licensed person.
Do we have a lot of recidivism for this one?
No, it's usually, any thoughts?
Letting them know that they need to make sure that all their problems are.
Yeah, it's often just a mistake that gets corrected fairly quickly. Would you agree? Yes.
Yeah, that for me, if it's medium and there's not a lot of recidivism, I'm okay with it.
Okay, we will move on to 7350. This is an establishment residential use. So this is when an inspector finds Evidence of a person living in an establishment, or the establishment does not have a direct entrance separate from the entrance in connection with private quarters. So, as you probably know, you can have an establishment in your home. Many people have separate buildings that are their home salons, or some have converted a garage, back rooms. Lots of people have done it very well, but it does have to have a separate entrance. And then you also cannot live in your establishment. So if it's a business, in a strip mall, you can't be living within that establishment. So we have this as a low to medium risk because we have not ever had any consumer harm as a result of this. The first offense is 50. There's no change recommended on this one. It's 50 to 100 to 150.
I'm okay with it.
Sounds good.
All right. We'll move on to 7351, restroom requirement. Must be clean, can't be used for storage, the floor has to be specific, and it needs to be vented. So this is when an inspector finds items stored inside a public restroom that the consumers can have access to. This often involves cleaning supplies. As many of you, if you've served on DRC, we see this on a regular basis. We have mop buckets in restrooms. We have chemicals for cleaning supplies. And then you also occasionally find salons and shops that are using it as an actual storage room where they have their back bar in their facility. So we do have this listed as a medium risk. Some of the things we have seen can be tripping hazard to the public. Again, this is really looking at those restrooms and what could be hazardous to a person that goes in there. There could be a child going into those restrooms. They can get into some of those chemical cleaning supplies or chemical hair products. So we consider this a medium risk. The committee upped this to $100, and then with the increase, that would go from 100 to 200 to 300.
Let me just go on the record and say I hate this one. And I really feel for the smaller establishments who have to keep, the cleaning per se supplies in the bathroom. But I mean, I'm glad the fine has been increased.
It has to be in a locked cabinet, right? I mean, if it was in a cabinet.
But some of these places are so tiny, like they have a bathroom and a sink, and then they have to have a cupboard on the wall to put,
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there a reason
That's just the old school girl in me, though, because I mean, I've been doing hair since the 80s, and some of those establishments are horrid, but yeah, I do like the increase, though.
Okay. I was going to ask what the reason was for it. If there was like a legitimate reason, are they seeing this a lot?
We don't see this particular. We do see them using it as a storage per se. Okay. But I don't think I've ever cited anyone on DRC for having Pine Sol and Clorox in the bathroom.
If you think about it, it's a public restroom, and so it's yes. For the public. I agree with you, though, Tanya. I think this is a statute, so this is not within regulations. It's at some point many years ago, the statute was developed, and I do think it's something, in the coming years, we're going to be going into our sunset review. It might be something we could hopefully clean up and make it clear, because the law does not actually say you can have items stored in a locked cabinet. So it is something that we could, potentially look at making a recommendation on improving this particular statute.
Well, I pray that I'm around at that point, because this is one of my small pet peeves.
Well, you're around. That's happening in 2 years. All right. The next one is 7352. No soap, towels, or towels or air hand dryer in the hand washing facility. Coming right out of COVID, this was one of our biggest issues. We have ranked this as a high because it is washing your hands. And so this is making sure you have those facilities, and you need to wash your hands properly with soap and water. And so the committee recommended increasing this from $50 to $100. That would make it 100 to 200 to 300.
Yes, you have to have soap in your restroom.
That's just
Like the
nasty.
bar's low on that.
We're leaving them money to buy more soap. So
Yeah, there you go. Right. Yes.
All right, the next item is 7354.4. This is a labor rights notice must be posted. This is a flyer that is put out by DIR, but we do cite for it. While it's important, and we agree it's important, the risk to the consumer is a low to medium, or also a risk to an employee who doesn't have this information. There was no change recommended in the first offense. The first offense is $50. It will go up to $100 and then go up to $150.
sounds good.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to 7351, no licensee in charge of a mobile unit. So this is the equivalent of no licensee in charge of an establishment, which is exactly the same. But this is just a licensee must be in charge of an actual mobile unit.
Okay.
I would say that we match the fines, I think. Did we
And
leave this
they
one?
are the same right now. In this
Okay.
document, the 100, 200, and 300 matches what is for an establishment.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And it's medium. Yeah, that looks good to me.
All right, we will move on. And we're going to go through a couple here that are the mobile units that are the same as what the establishment. 7359 is employing an unlicensed person in a mobile unit. I don't believe we've ever found this. And however, if we did, it would be a very high risk. And that is 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000.
And I would propose that we up that to what we did on the original one of 15, 3, and 45, I think it was.
Correct.
Agreed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next is 7360 mobile unit used for a residential purpose. Again, we've never seen this, but if it could happen, and that I think we had that ranked a little bit higher because it's a mobile unit. So that's a very condensed space that you are operating your business out of and could be living in. So the current fine, what was the fine for mobile? It was the same. So the fine is the same. 50 to 100 to 150 as what it would be for an establishment as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Do we want to check in at this point?
Yep. Thank you. We will go ahead and pause there. This will go back. We started this little break time with 7320.2 illegal treatments. So we will open it up to public comment on anything that we have discussed in this section.
Thank you. This is the moderator, and still no public in the room, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. So this is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on the issues recently discussed, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 15-second warning. And we do have a request for comment from Fred Jones. Fred, I'll send you a request to unmute. And you're
Hey,
unmuted.
committee members, thank you. Fred Jones again, Professional Beauty Federation. Okay, I'm going to act as the scolding professor because I fear that we've lost sight of Christie's early mandate to look for opportunities to reduce fees and reduce duplications. That's particularly pronounced in this section dealing with licensing paperwork. So I just want you to consider the struggles that this industry in particular has with paperwork and with deadlines. I think the ball that we should all be keeping our eye on is how they are performing their services, not how they do on meeting deadlines and paperwork. So with that I think there's ample opportunities that have been missed to reduce some of those paperwork fees, especially where there's duplicate fees. Dealing with apprenticeships, there's a lot of duplicate fees that we've glossed over. There's one if they're not being directly supervised, which hits the apprentice. And if they're not being directly supervised, they're considered an unlicensed worker, which is a huge fine for that apprentice. And then the salon is hit as well for employing someone that's not unlicensed. So we've skipped a few opportunities to reduce some duplicate fees that are often just a matter of paperwork oversight. So I would recommend looking at, for example, 7348, reducing those fees as well to $25, no licensee in charge, because someone doesn't just want to take responsibility in signing it, even though they're
15 seconds.
licensees. The 7349 expired license, again, they're licensees, they've been schooled and educated, and they just missed a deadline, so reduce those fees. I do have a problem with restrooms. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Fred. There is such ease of access online for these things to be done, and it was built in there that the inspector would take note if they were able to complete those things right then and there or in a short amount of time. I think that's important to all of us. If it was a paperwork thing and they didn't realize the deadline had just happened and they can do it right then or very soon, then that would be a no citation type of situation. I think we're all clear on that. Yeah.
Correct.
And
Okay.
we do have a request for comment from Maria Barrios. Maria, I'll send you a request to unmute in case you can unmute yourself. You're unmuted.
Hello, I put the question in the Q&A section. I just had a question in regards to a home establishment and a public bathroom. Will you be cited if there's no public bathroom or no sink, and if it's shared with others in the home?
I would recommend you send that in an email to the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology to ask that specific question.
Okay, and it's specifically for a manicurist.
Yeah, there's definitely requirements for home salons, so I would reach out to the board's general email.
Let's see. And we did have one more from Fred Jones. Would you like to recognize him again?
Yes.
All right, Fred, I'm sending you a request to unmute.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't asking for more time. I was just putting in a Q&A statement that everyone could read. Forgive me. I wasn't asking for another bite at the apple, but thank you for granting it. Thanks.
Oh, would you like me to read your comment?
Oh, I thought everyone could read the
No, that's just
Q&A.
for the moderator.
Oh, okay. Well, no, I'll just state it then. I just think we need to really go out of our way to look for opportunities to reduce duplicate fines and reduce fines that are not high risk. And so far, we haven't done that yet. So anyway, it's just another reminder. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is the end of the requests for public comment. Shall I close the public comment features?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
At this time, committee members, would you be open to a 10-minute break?
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
We appreciate
Yes.
that, so we will take a 10-minute break. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are back and ready if the webcaster and moderator are back and ready.
We are back and ready.
Okay, thank you. Tanya, are you there? There she is.
There I go. I don't know. It wasn't letting me pop my video up for a moment, but yeah.
All right. We will go ahead and get back to it. I did want to make a comment that we will end this meeting at noon. We do have to break for lunch, and our next meeting is scheduled to start at 1. And we have members of that committee who are not board members. So we will try to see what we can get through in the next 45 minutes on this and then go from there. All right, so we are at 7400. Excuse me. This is no change of address notice filed. There is a law that says that any licensee has 30 days, I believe, to notify the board of a change of address. Again, people just forget to notify us. This is a low risk. Usually it's found during an inspection and we make the change on the inspection report right then and there. This offense was at $50. The Health and Safety Committee recommended lowering it to $25. And so that would make it go from 25 to 50 to 75.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, next section is 7404L. I think it's an L. This is refusal or interference with an inspection. So this is when an individual in the establishment, an inspector goes out to do an inspection and they either prevent them from coming in and doing an inspection or they are interfering with the inspection. Now that can be a lot of different things. It can be becoming hostile. It can be running out the back door, all of which happen. It can be hiding items so that the inspector doesn't cite you. We do consider this a high risk. It's not only a high risk for consumers, it's also a high risk for our inspectors. This is it was $1,000. It is proposed to be $1,000, but now we'll have an increase, which it did not have an increase before. So this would be first offense is 1,000, second is 2,000, and third is 3,000.
How is this one different than the first one that we deliberated on?
That was refuse an inspection.
Mm-hmm.
So this is when we can't physically get in.
So can you?
Oh,
Anyone?
sorry. So 7313 that we talked about before was when we physically can't get in.
Okay.
Access.
Yes, and this one is refusal or interference.
So the first one might be a locked door. Am I correct? Any of my inspection managers or enforcement managers, please feel free to speak up.
I read the first one, the 7313, as if like the inspector pulls up and they can see somebody in there and they don't open the door. That seems to be the common violation when I see this one.
That would be 7404L. Yeah.
Yeah, that situation that you described would be this violation, 7404L. If we can see someone in there and they're refusing us to come in and inspect, because the law says that we have to have access if services are being performed. The first one would be a locked cabinet. So it could be that a hairstylist is a booth renter and they lock up their tools when they leave, or even an employee, and the owner can't find the keys. That would be the first violation. That is not this violation. This is when there is something happening. They are doing something to either prevent us from inspecting by force or by locking us out or interfering with the inspection.
7313, Christy, though, it reads as an individual physically prevents an inspector from conducting an inspection. It doesn't read as if it was not able to access
An area of the establishment. Maybe on 7313, we could add in access to entire establishment or access to a specific area. Yeah, maybe we could specify on 7313 more.
7313.
Why don't you come closer just to make sure they can hear you? We do have our inspections managers here that are way more familiar. You can pull up a chair. You can do it right there. You could have done it right there.
Oh.
This thing's pretty good.
Okay, so when we are utilizing 7313, that is when, say, for example, the inspector arrives on site. It could be a locked cabinet, it could be a locked drawer, it could be a locked sub suite, facial room, something like that, that would be locked. So that's, they're basically not allowing them access to inspect the entire establishment, which is what we have the authority to do. 7404 is when they outright refuse to open the door, allow access to the establishment, allow entry in any way, shape, or form, or if they are hiding tools, or if they become hostile or, try to put their hands on the inspector or push the inspector out of the door. That's how we enforce 7404L.
And so Tanya,
So my question,
your document in your packet is incorrect.
okay, that was what I was just going to refer to, because what we're looking at, so if we're going to present this to the board, then 7313, the verbiage needs to be clarified of
Correct.
access to an establishment. Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
Okay, so on 7404L, are we good with the 1,000, 2,000 to 3,000?
I would say, again, is this high risk? I would propose to do this one at 1,500 also.
74.
Because we've seen this in DRC, right? They chase the inspector. They just some of the extreme measures that go on as if it was, I see it on the same level as them using prohibited tools or something in that severity, putting our inspectors at risk.
Yeah. What if they have a low level of risk, but to them it all feels the same? So they're like preventing them from seeing like a dirty towel thing, or like cleaning supplies in the restroom. Like, what if it ends up, or do you find that the actual violation they were preventing was lower?
It's not usually the case.
Okay,
they're not usually doing it. They're not even thinking, I'm going to prevent this because I have a dirty towel or something or even, it's usually way more egregious than that. Would you agree that the prevention of us coming in?
It's usually like rasps or cheese graters, that kind of thing that they're trying to hide.
Well, that for hiding.
They're unlicensed people who are there, who are running out the back door.
A lot of times they won't let us in because they know they have unlicensed people working.
And not to. Okay, got it. I just want to know if what you're usually finding on the other side of that interference.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you see high recidivism to second and third offenses?
Yes.
Okay, we do need a deterrent then. Yeah, I agree with Tanya.
This is another example of an opportunity that when this does pass, however year or however long, when this is all regulation, that we can use it as an educational tool for everyone of how important it is to, and on this one, like the fine is $1,500. It just, all of these are such good cues for our licensed population of what to focus on and what's allowed and what's not allowed. I hope that, I look forward to that being public knowledge so that everyone can see these fines and know, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just making sure we agree that this is high risk. You'll move this to 1,500 to be the same as those other high risk ones.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Next is 904D. No photographic identification available. The regulation does state that you must have your photo ID to show the inspector. We considered this a high risk because you can't identify someone, and we have found people that will use other people's licenses to be working. And so, one of our regular things the inspectors do is match up a photo ID with a license that's posted at the station. So the committee did look to increase this from 50 to 100. I don't think it warrants going up to like $1,000.
No.
But the item now is, the recommendation is 100 to 200 to 300.
I agree.
Oh, okay.
I agree.
I like the old schedule too. I mean, that works because I still see it goes up to 150 for the third offense. It doubles and then it goes to 150.
Correct.
I'm okay with the either one.
Same. But I agree, this is as another educational, opportunity of like, make sure you have your driver's license on you, your license is posted because they need to be corroborated.
Yeah, I kind of want to keep the old one unless you're seeing a really high recidivism and you need a deterrent.
We definitely need a deterrent.
Okay.
I think either one is good, but we definitely need a deterrent. So raising it would probably be a good idea.
Okay. Sounds good.
Honestly, Danielle, I on this one, I do think $50 is reasonable for not having your driver's license on you or something. If you have an actual practitioner license. So I could go either way, but this one could be 50.
So let me give you guys a devil's advocate on this really quick.
Okay.
You, as a stylist, as a licensed cosmetologist, inspectors can come in at any time. You are required to have your license on you. If you're driving a car to get there, you need to have some kind of ID. A lot of times they don't want to show it. A lot of times they don't want to show it because of fraud. So.
Got it.
The inspector can call the inspector line and they can verify the birth date and social, then they're verifying who they are. They don't necessarily need the ID.
Yeah, the law says they have to have it.
And if they drove there.
Do I hear then that you are interested in the proposed fine amount?
Yes.
Okay.
I think Danielle and I could go the other way with the current fine amount. How about we do 75?
Split the difference.
Yeah, that's true. You could modify it a bit.
That'd be 75, 150, and
300?
300.
Are you okay? Yeah, are we okay with that, y'all?
What?
Who's talking? I'm
Oh,
sorry.
me. Sorry, Tanya and Danielle. Tanya and Kelly, y'all.
I did not see your lips moving. I was like, whose voice is that one?
Sorry. Is that sound like a good compromise?
I'm good.
Okay. I
Okay,
said
so
sometimes
that
if you forgot your ID at home or something, like it's just like, it's a lot. It's Okay.
Next is 905, consumer information not posted. We rank this as a high risk because this is our information that we provide to. This is the main reason why a consumer would know who to contact if they were harmed. And so we have it as a high risk, but the committee, the Health and Safety Committee increased it from 50 to 100. So it would be 100, 200, 300.
Is this poster provided to the establishment owners when they apply for an establishment, or do they have to order it?
Nope, they receive it with every establishment license they get, even renewals, right? So even a renewal license. And it's
You
online.
mean the little, are we talking about the little piece of paper that doesn't have anything on it anymore, that just says message to consumer and then the number?
Yes.
Again, for this one, maybe I'm okay with the original one.
Yeah, me too.
I am as
looking
well.
for actual harm, physical harm to the consumer.
Yeah.
And I think when
50.
people do get harmed, they definitely have found ways to reach out.
I agree.
Okay, so
$50.
your recommendation is at the original.
Yes.
Okay. Next is 920, apprentice training records not available or incomplete. This is when an inspector finds an apprentice present and they are unable to provide their training records. And Tiffany, if you can remember, does this go to the trainer?
Yes.
So this one is against the trainer. They are supposed to present their training records at all times. They're supposed to have those and present those if needed. We have this as a medium high. And there was no change recommended in the first offense. So this would be 100, 200, 300.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Sounds good.
Are you okay? I'm thinking also like, I want to hear like a justification or a reason, like what was the reason for the increase? Are we trying to deter? Is there a high recidivism?
It's the same on the first offense. It's just
right.
that
So the
incremental.
committee only made a recommendation on the first offense with the consideration that all gradual increases are the same percentage.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
I would keep. I see this as one of those that maybe it doesn't have to apply. It seems a little arbitrary to raise it just because of the ones like the formula just applying to everything.
Well, I feel like if we're going to do that, because we are recognizing that is an offense, and in the apprenticeship, when they come in, you're basically being able to prove that this person is actually doing the work, and these records are there to solidify this person's graduation and that they are actually putting in the hours needed to become a licensed individual.
Yeah, and that's why I like the first graduate. I like that it graduates with each offense. I don't know if it needs to go the 2 and the 300. I just
If
thought
I'm hearing
150
correct,
and 2 are probably doing it.
but I think across the board, they want it to incrementally mirror the other increases.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Okay. All right. The next one is 965, display of licenses. This we ranked as a high risk because if you don't display your license, a consumer will never know who they're getting services from. However, with a high risk, they chose not to change that offense. So it's still $50, $100, and $150.
This one I don't understand because to
Yeah.
me, if they're not displaying their license, how do you know they're actually licensed?
Right.
And as far as what the fee would be, I always felt that this one was kind of low because it creates complacency. But
Yeah. $250, I'd say. Every
Yeah.
licensee knows when you go to school that your license needs to be posted.
Right. And if we were keeping precedent from the previous, like I would actually say this one would be more and I would keep the other one the same and I would change this one.
Yeah.
Because we didn't change this one. So yeah, I feel like there are some that
This needs to be increased, in my
yeah,
opinion.
this one does.
Yeah.
I think the
It
last
doesn't even have to be in a frame, just a piece of paper, post it up. It's just your license. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no excuse on this one. $250.
And this one's super important.
55, $750.
I'm sorry, do we all agree on 250?
yeah,
I would caution the committee that that's a very significant increase.
We do another like 75, like we did for the other one. I mean, well, again, I'm going to ask my normal question. Do we see this in DRC? Is there a high recidivism?
we see it in DRC, and a lot of times we see it in DRC because it's not the person working at that station.
Yeah.
Do we see it a lot? I can't say I see it a lot, but the instances are the person who's at that station, it doesn't belong to them. And that's the whole idea of the licensing. It's supposed to be displayed at your workstation.
Should we do 100 for the first offense?
I mean, is this something where are there like, yeah, there's not like, I mean, it's easy to do, right? You should have it up.
Exactly. It takes a magnet, a push pin, anything. It's everyone that is licensed has a paper form of it, and it needs to be up. Like Christy said, this is consumer protection. The consumer needs to know that the person, and without having to ask for it, can I see your license, please? It should be posted so they could see it at their workstation. But I agree, 250 might be a little intense. 100, perhaps 150. For compromise sake.
Yeah, or we put
Tanya?
it lower than high risk, because if it's high risk, then you're looking at possibly a change. If it's less than that, then I think that's a good justification to keep it.
Right, I agree. Maybe medium high would make more sense.
I would, yeah, instead of changing the fee, just change the risk.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you could have your license out and you're still doing something else that's not safe.
Yeah.
But
So-
okay, I'm going to disagree there, because if you're working at a station and you don't have your license displayed, that is a high risk to the public, because how do I know that you're the person that is supposed to be working on me?
Mhm.
All good points.
Yeah. My thing is, we have fee schedules in place. What's the justification for raising the fee? And if I don't hear, like, I want to hear like it's a recidivism thing and we need a deterrent, and it's
And
causing a lot of harm.
I do want to bring up again that the intent of the law for us to be doing this is to remove fees, not
Yeah.
really the intent is to what can we not fine for?
Okay, that one I would say no. I mean, that I would keep it the same. I feel like this one and the last one should just stay the same. There are already fee schedules in place. They're already graduated by offense. And I just not hearing a justification for increasing. If there's something that's really high risk and a high recidivism, then the fee increase would be meant for a deterrent.
When we talk about no licensing displayed and not being able to verify if that's the person, that is a public safety issue that how do you protect the public with the person who's at that station representing themselves to be something, and you can't even verify that that's who they are? And it's largely affects probably new customers visiting an establishment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
we're not saying it shouldn't be fined. Like, these are definitely fines, but do we have to increase the fine? I don't know that I'm hearing that we need to increase it. Like, it's already fined and it's in place. But I guess I'm okay with this one not changing. Mm-hmm.
I could be too, but I think in theory, with the high risk categorizing and the importance that every licensee has their paper form of their license and should be displaying it, it doesn't seem to make sense, even though you're not hurting the public technically. The $50 does seem low in relation to all the things that this licensee needs to handle. So I could go for raising it, and I could also go for leaving it, but I'm glad it's on there.
It's on there. Yeah, I think I'm happy that it's on there. Yeah, they're being fined. I just don't know if we need to raise the fines.
I don't know anyone that does this, but it definitely should be fined if they are.
Yeah. I'm okay keeping it.
So are we leaning towards no change to the fine?
Tanya? She muted.
it's one of those, what is the ultimate goal? And the ultimate goal is public safety. How do you get someone's attention when it comes to public safety? I agree with Danielle that the fine is there. Yeah, I would say take it to the committee.
Yeah, let's move on.
Take it to the board. Yeah.
Take it to the board.
We're going to leave it as is.
Okay.
And then we'll discuss it at the board level. Okay. Next is 978 with a lot of numbers and letters after it. So this is receptacles, cabinets, and containers. So this is when an inspector finds that an establishment does not have the minimum equipment, such as a covered waste container for hair, closed container for soil linens, closed containers to store clean tools and linens in, proper containers for disinfectant solution, and mixed disinfectant. So this is kind of a catch-all one. It is, but keeping in mind that this is about the having these devices. So this is only a fine for an establishment license, correct, Tiffany? Right, we would only fine an establishment for this, and it's requiring it's establishment requirements. So it's what's required for you to have in these facilities. So this is listed as low medium because if you didn't have a covered waste container for your hair, yes, we need you to have that, and it's important to have that, but is it going to actually harm someone if you don't have that? So that's where the low medium comes in, and there was no recommendation on the first offense for this, so it would be stay the same to 50, 100, 150.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
Sounds good.
All right, the next one is 978A5. This is insufficient disinfectant for total immersion. So this is when an inspector finds that you have something in your barbicide jar that is only halfway full, or your container that you've put any of your tools in for disinfectant and they are not completely covered. So you're only disinfecting half of them. We would consider this a high risk. Those tools need to be completely disinfected. And there was no change in the first offense, but with the new gradual increase, it would go from 100 to 200 to 300.
Yeah, this has a direct impact on the consumer. It's high risk. Yes, I'm okay with the new proposed fines.
So am I.
I am as well. And I think it is important to note here that I know Tiffany and her staff are working to educate in these moments of opportunity. If someone has 1 inch shorter of barbicide in their container, maybe they'll suggest that that needs to be filled up. So it's not just an automatic citation if they see, you know, sometimes it can be an education opportunity, right? I believe I'm speaking correctly there. So. Yes.
Yeah, it would depend on what we found inside there. You often find it to be dirty in addition, so it would just depend on the situation. But we always look at the number of offense, how bad the photos are. You know, if it's disgusting and there's only an inch worth of disinfectant, they're getting cited.
Sure. And I just remember being in DRC and having a licensee say that it was just a little bit too low. And in that moment, someone could have just told her, you know, we need you to fill it up. And I do believe that our inspectors are aiming for that type of education now. So good job, everybody. But I agree with this fine. Yeah.
I don't know where we started on this section.
We started at 7,400.
So are we about time for public?
We have about
Okay, we'll do a few more.
minutes left. Maybe this one page and we'll see where we're at.
Okay, next is 978A6, no steam, dry heat sterilizer for electrology tools. We don't find this often because electrologists normally use disposable needles now. However, if they choose not to, this would be a very high risk. The first offense is 500, and there was no recommended change in the gradual as well. So it's 500, 1,000 to 1,500.
Sounds good.
Yep, I'm good with it.
Yep, me too.
All right, next is 978B, no disinfectant solution available for use. This would obviously be a high risk. It means you have no solution whatsoever. The committee recommended increasing this from 250 to 500. That means the second offense is 1,000. Third offense was 1,500.
Do you find this a lot?
Not a lot, but we definitely find it.
Yeah.
This is very scary of thinking of somebody having nothing to a disinfectant. You can't just make up your own solution with lemon or something and say that it works. So I think this is warranted.
Yeah. And if you wow, that's shocking. Yeah, if that is happening. I'm okay with the new proposed fees.
Tanya, are you okay?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. All right, next is 978C. This is no manufactured labeled container for disinfectant. So this is the container. So rather that container is empty, brand new and full, half used. A lot of these disinfectants come as a concentrate, so they're mixed with water. Is that right? But you have to have the container. And the reason why you have to have the container is because that's what has the EPA label on it. And you have to have that label to prove that your disinfectant meets the criteria for disinfecting solution. It also provides you with the mixing instructions so that somebody who, is coming in next to mix up a new batch knows exactly how to make that mix that disinfectant. So we have considered this a high risk. The Health and Safety Committee recommended a $500. That's increased from $250, and then the gradual would go to $1,000 to $1,500.
So Grizzy, this is not like the tub that the quartz is in with the implements. This is the bottle of the concentrated solution, right? Okay.
The bottle that you bought from your supply,
Okay.
the container it came in, and even if it's empty, and we say this all the time, even if it's empty, you have to keep it because you have to have that label present for anybody to be able to see that it meets the requirements.
Got it.
And then to agree with Kelly's original one, this is more of a also seen as an educational thing, right? So someone fills up the barbicide, new person, and throws it away. The inspector will definitely get a citation, but also educate them on why it's important to keep the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, down the road, I see this as a really nice way for us to elaborate and speak in layman's terms about each of these things, of just reminders to our population of how important these certain things are and what to do and what not to do. Like, don't throw the bottle away if you mix it in another container. Yeah. Things like that.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's true.
Okay.
Moving on to 979, disinfecting non-electrical tools. So this is when we find that the tools themselves have not been disinfected. This would be a very high risk. This is, if we find and we can prove that they are using dirty tools on a client. So often an inspector might be in a salon for an extended period of time. They may see somebody pull a tool out of a dirty drawer and use it on a brand new client. So this fine is $100. And that's actually high risk, but the committee didn't make any recommendations except for to do the gradual increase, which technically lowers the second and third offense.
This is that catch-22 because exactly a dirty tool on a client. I feel like the first offense should be higher.
I would say that needs to increase.
I want to clarify real quick that this section of law covers a lot of different things. It covers the scenario I just mentioned, an inspector actually seeing a dirty tool being used. It also covers the disinfectant solution is not covered. So if the lid is off to the side, again, our inspectors are usually telling somebody to just close the lid, or even in cite and fine, we're telling them to just close the lid. But it also is a tool not stored in a labeled container or a container labeled clean that may be dirty. So it's also a labeling issue. So that's one of the reasons why this starts out at $100, because I would say, and Tiffany can correct me if I'm wrong, the more common violations are labeling for this violations.
I see that.
And the labeling itself, I'm going to ask you, is it high risk or is it medium high?
It's probably medium high because they could be putting a dirty tool in a drawer that's not labeled correctly and then mistakenly use that tool again. And that's where the real harm is going to come in, is using a dirty tool on more than one person, because that's going to cross-contaminate. That's going to cause all kinds of problems. Mm-hmm. So I would say that aspect is probably medium high. And that is the more common. The more common for this violation is labeling.
Mm.
I think $100 is fair.
I'm okay with the new proposed one.
Yeah.
And
it's probably one of our highest violations as well, because labeling is always an issue.
Yeah. And there's going to be other things probably that will kick in like there's other fines that may stack.
You got to buy a label maker.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are okay with the proposed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Don't know what that says. Okay. All right, we're going to pause here and open up to public comment. I believe we started at 7,400. All right, we will open up for public comment.
All right, thank you. This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send. Each person will have 2 minutes with a 15-second warning. And our first request for comment is from Fred Jones. I'll send you a request to unmute. You're unmuted.
Thank you again for the time. I appreciate the committee in trying to hold the line on increased fines. I just wanted to provide a little bit more context to this work. And I served for a number of years on the Health and Safety Committee. I did not serve on it in 2022 when they were working on these proposed fine amounts, but that was also before the new law. The context to that law is a growing desire on the part of some key policymakers in Sacramento to really cut back our license scope. In fact, there are some that want to completely obliterate our license altogether. And what happens is a licensee will get an inspection and have all these fines that add up. And some of them are duplicate and some are dealing with license labeling, with notification posters. And it all adds up to like $2,000 or something like that. And they go to their legislators and complain. And the legislators are like, wow, you got a $2,000 fine for cutting hair? These legislators don't have a lot of respect for our industry to begin with. And some of them are prone to want to do away with our license altogether. So I just wanted to kind of put in context the work that you're doing. You're really trying to save our license from policymakers in Sacramento that want to obliterate it completely. And the more you can reduce fees, reduce duplication, the better. Because these stories, I'm telling you, as an advocate for this industry for 24 years, it's really hard for me to defend and put in context the stories that these
15
lawmakers are
seconds.
hearing from licensees and salon owners. So anyway, I do appreciate all of your work on this. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. And I do not see any further requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
All right. We are going to call it at this point. We will schedule another meeting to finish this up, which we should be able to do at one more meeting. So we'll be in touch with committee members on that. Any comments left on this agenda item from the committee members before I move on?
Just kudos for everyone's work, and for just the evaluation process is intensive, but we are doing it for our licensed population and for the consumers. And so just thank you and kudos to everybody.
Thank you. All right. We do have a couple more agenda items. The next agenda item is public comments for the Health and Safety Committee for items not on this agenda. So we will open it up to public comment.
And no public comment in the room, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. If anyone would like to make a comment for an item that is not on the agenda, you may look for the hand icon, click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the question mark icon and click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send. Are there any comments for items not on the agenda? All right, I see no requests for comment. Turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you. So that leads us to any suggestions for future agenda items. I will ask this committee to hopefully just have this agenda item for the next one. And then once we figure that out, we'll go from there. So unless you have anything for this committee that you would like to see at the next agenda, on the next agenda, we will obviously have this item on the agenda.
Yeah, that works for me.
Great. Okay, I think we are good and we will adjourn this meeting. This committee day will reconvene at 1 o'clock this afternoon with our Health and Safety Committee meeting.
Thank
Thank you
you,
all.
Kelly.
Thank you,
Tanya, always
everyone.
happy to work with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, bye. Thank you, everyone.
And this is the moderator. The meeting will remain open. If you'd like to just stay on mute and turn your cameras off, you may come back to your computer at 1 o'clock.
Awesome.